Think about next time you want to go give, or next time you find yourself feeling compelled to take an action. Question yourself, where is that coming from? What is the motivator underneath that? And then challenge yourself, okay, what could be the motivator that's underneath that?
So when someone told me, hey, listen, I'm doing this for this reason, I believed it, not realizing, no, they're doing this and they're saying this, but unconsciously, they're hoping that later on, this is going to happen. Hey, everybody, it's Bianca.
And it's Emilia. Happy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever day you are listening to this podcast. We are
All the
grateful you're
days.
joining us.
Happy day. Happy day. Um, I'm gonna intrigue you. I'm gonna ask you one of your favorite
Ooh,
questions ever.
do tell me.
How would you define selflessness? Get us started with a definition.
Okay. Shared meaning. So, selflessness. How would I define selflessness? It comes down to giving without a need to receive. So, strictly giving without any hope, desire, or belief that one needs to receive something in reciprocity.
Did you ever watch the show Friends?
No, I haven't.
Okay, anyone who's listening to this who has watched Friends, you're gonna understand what I'm about to say. There was an episode of Friends where two of the characters were like kind of going at each other a little bit, saying that there's no such thing as a selfless deed because anything that you do, there technically is a positive thing that you're gonna get in return. So, like, let's say that I
Right.
go out of my way to give you a present. I
Hmm.
might not ask for anything in return, but like you being excited is something that like I expect unconsciously, or like the positive feelings that I get from
Hmm.
giving you something, it doesn't actually quote unquote make it selfless because I'm still getting something in return. And they were kind of going at each other trying to find different things that quote unquote like that technically could be selfless, but
Right.
that was just really funny. So
That just
how
zoomed
do
me back
you
to a moment just before you dig into that. That zoomed me back into a moment where I was never really someone that like loved the let's open gifts in front of the people who have given them, because exactly what you just mentioned, where it was the person who is giving the gift was like way more excited for you to open it in their presence than they were for you to actually see whether or not you enjoyed it. So go back to your question because I think that I'll round that out.
do you believe that there actually is any purely selfless act? And how do you really know the difference between if someone is doing something with the intention of being selfless, even though,
Mhm.
yes, they might get like a secondary benefit of it, of like seeing you be excited or joyful or whatever. But so that was two questions. How do you know the difference?
Well, I think that selflessness exists on a scale, right? And so there's a couple layers to this that I'm excited to get into with you on this episode, because the scale encompasses that which is received or perceived on the person receiving, right? Whatever gift or giving, or let's just use gifts, for example. So the external of that is, the giver looking at that person, just waiting for a smile to come across their face, right? Looking at the present all boxed up and like super excited to get that external validation that I went out of my way to get this person a gift. And thereby, because they have a smile that comes across their face, there is that sense of external validation, which helps me to believe that I am a selfless person. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you'll kind of bear with me with that example, is there's an internal validation that is constantly seeking that external validation. So it's a dance between that internal and external. So how do you actually know when you are on that scale is what I would say number 1. How you know when you're on that scale of selflessness as opposed to selfishness it starts with what is the internal looking to in order to receive validation? That's my question. This is going to be a really interesting one to try to articulate.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull it out of you. So is what you're saying, what is that what's the motivator? Like, what's the internal motivator? Like,
Yeah,
what are
we
you
could look at
hoping
it
to
as
get out of this?
right. We could look at it as like intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, just like that, right? What is the value of any exchange, right? You could talk about it calling a friend, giving a gift. You could talk about it like being there for someone.
I There's so many ways we could take this, but I wanna be very specific about this based on what I think people
Hmm.
will get the most benefit out of. So, before you and I hit record, I had said that, in the past, and I'm still overcoming this, but in the past, I used to be an extremely naive person. And I never believed people had secondary motives, right? I thought everyone was selfless. Well, everyone is just super kind and people don't have ulterior motives. And what do you mean? No, they're just being nice to me or they're just, whatever. So many people fall into that because I think number 1, it's naivety, and I think number 2, we have big hearts, and those 2
Hmm.
together are a lethal combination, and I know
They
for
are.
me, it definitely was because it put me in a lot of really difficult situations that I didn't know how to get myself out of, and so
Hmm.
understanding how to be able to tell the difference between someone who is just genuinely giving to give and they really don't have an ulterior motive underneath it compared to this person is doing things because they're expecting something in return.
Mm.
That's where I think would be the most value to this because I guarantee a lot of the people listening have had very similar situations or similar experiences to me where you can't tell the difference. You think everybody's a good person and you end up getting hurt. So,
Right.
what are some of if you had to give like actual tangibles, what are some of the tangible things that you know and have seen of like this? Because you can't know someone's intention, right? But you can tell by behavior. So what are some of the tells? What are some of the qualities? What are some of the characteristics that you have seen that you're like, okay, watch for this? These are things that you can tell this person is doing this for selflessness. And
Hmm.
if you're looking for this, these are tells of this person probably is only doing this because they know they're going to get something after.
Mm. So what I'll share is like in the context of kind of like relationships, because this is something that isn't necessarily directly talked about a lot, but there's for sure when selfishness and selflessness come into play in relational dynamics, you see the outcomes of that happening a lot. So, give, for example, a partner who believes that they're truly selfless. This is them giving, 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 having maybe no boundaries, even at their own expense, because they hold this
Mm.
belief that they're selfless. So, they'll give to their partner let's just say they make a date night every single night, and even though that expenses their own needs, their wants, their needs, they're okay doing that because ultimately they hold this belief that I'm a selfless person, so it's okay for me just constantly give, and I'm not necessarily looking for anything in return. And those tangible, those practical things is whenever this person is giving, it's without a it's without an energy that is expecting something in return. For example, well, last night I put together a little adventure or a little date, and because of what I did, like, I want you to clean the dishes or some sort of keeping score. That's a tell of someone
Mm.
who might, whether or not they believe whether they're selfless or selfish, any part of them that's keeping score, they're not giving just strictly for the sake of giving. There's a part of them that is keeping score to make sure that the other person knows how selfless. they've been being. And if you hear the undertone of that, it's not only how selfless they've been giving, but also like what they unconsciously are hoping to receive in return for that. So I think that one of the fundamental aspects to really discuss here is that by our nature, human beings are reciprocal. So I think
Mm,
going back to the question, can someone be like wholly, fully, truly selfless? Back to the friends dialogue, I don't know if you can really stand up a bulletproof argument to that. However, it does, because it does exist to a spectrum. I think it's really important to note where you actually do land and fall on that spectrum. To the
mm,
element of how do you know when someone is extremely selfish, the world, for lack of better words, revolves around them. Their time, their energy, their resources, everything that you do is a wild inconvenience to their existence. And you hear this come up a lot in conversations with them. They're only focusing, like I had a client, for example, she shared with me that one of her friends wants to believe that she's a super selfless human being, but when she gets on the phone with her friend, all she is talking about is herself all the time. When she's at parties or hanging out with someone, her friend is always talking about, and the conversation comes back to her. Always, always, always. And so I think it's fascinating to see the belief that actually is very much apparent in a lot of people, where a lot of people believe that they're super duper selfless. But if someone actually examined their actions, right? When you give a gift, are you constantly waiting for someone to like send you a text back, or they're going to say thank you or whatever? Like I had this one person in mind who literally has this belief about themselves that they are so selfless and play the victim, because when they give, there's an unconscious motivation to actually receive something back. And because they're not aware of that unconscious motivation, they actually give in efforts to receive. They get
mm.
constantly slammed by the reality of how other people receive things.
Hey everybody, my name is Isaac, and my experience with Evolve has been nothing short of phenomenal. And the community, the Evolve Ventures Society, is just a group of people who are all like-minded and growth-oriented, and you can ask questions and get support from anyone. And it's a really private group, and you can share and be open, and that's what I really love about it. Emilia and Bianca have been nothing short of uh, phenomenal, honestly. The amount they care about their team members and their mental well-being and their mental health, and improving everyone's self-awareness in terms of being growth-minded and growing to where you want to be. I could not have asked for a better place to be at right now in this point in my life. And yeah, have a great rest of your year ahead, and keep evolving, everybody.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think this is easier in theory than it is in practice, because a lot of the times when you're first meeting people, or when you're in like initial interactions with people, you don't have enough information to really make those
Yeah.
judgment calls. And this is how people end up getting love bombed. This is how quote unquote narcissists end up getting people trapped in with them. It's this overabundance of love, it's this abundance of care and nurturance. And then over time, you start to see some of the more harmful and destructive behaviors start to come out. I think a lot of people also just really struggle believing that other people would have harmful intent,
Yeah.
or even just like not super loving and kind intent. And again, I know this is something that I really struggled with. I really believed that I believed everybody at face value. So
Yeah.
when someone told me, hey, listen, I'm doing this for this reason, I believed it, not
Mhm.
realizing, no, they're doing this and they're saying this, but unconsciously, they're hoping that later on this is going to happen, or they're doing this because they're burging off of you, or they're benefiting by being around you. So like,
Mm.
I had someone tell me recently that, and again, I was super naive. I didn't know this. I used to go to the gym with a friend of mine all the time, and it was a guy. And another one of our friends was like, B, you know why he wanted to go to the gym with you all the time, right? And I'm like, because we're friends? Like, what do you mean? He's like, no. He's like, you were the quote unquote hot girl at the gym and he benefited by being seen with you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, what? It blew my mind. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? I'm here thinking that we're just hanging out and it's just me and a friend going to the gym, when in
Yeah.
reality this person had these secondary motives that were probably even unconscious to them
Mm.
of, I get to go to the gym with the hot fit girl. See, it's stuff like that. It's these small things that we think nothing of, but are actually way more layered than that. And I think this is why we have a really hard time believing or not believing people at face value, and have a hard time believing that people are doing things for reasons other than they are, or other than they are saying they are. It's a much more nuanced thing, I think, than what we're going to be able to cover in today and in this episode, but I think this is a really good conversation starter. So where I'll end this is what I've done lately. And I've made a lot of notes to myself to be able to do this.
Mm.
When I'm in any encounter, the first question that I'm asking myself is, what could this person be wanting from this? What are their motivators? Me knowing what I know about this person in the depth that I know about them, what could they possibly want?
Mm.
What could they possibly be benefiting from? What could some of their motivators be? Now, there's a difference between healthy skepticism and cynicism. And this is really where we draw the line within this. But not being afraid to ask questions like that is how you can ensure you can understand the difference between someone who's selfless and someone who's just giving to get,
Mhm.
and how you can be sure that you're not unconsciously and unintentionally doing things with the expectation of getting something in return or having a benefit.
Yeah. There's a couple things on that I want to kind of round this episode to close in. It's absolutely fair. And that overly skepticism point goes into it, brings up a client of mine that I've had in the past where he was groomed from a young age and he didn't know this until way later. Groomed as a child at a very young age to be eventually trained to be an Olympic athlete. And
Oh,
that
wow.
training from the young age because of his biological predispositions to be able to be an athletic competitor, like once he realized that that grooming existed from a very young age and it included his parents, right? And then the story of, well, we were really doing this for you. This is in your best interest. And their his parents claimed the selflessness card. Like, I was just doing this for you, right? This is what I thought would be best for you. When the parents claim this selfless defense, he became extremely skeptical of everyone else's intentions, because
Mm,
when you start to, and he actually ended up moving towards more fame in the competitive arena, and with fame and power and glory and this and that also came a lot of trust issues, because if your parents can be that way, then what does that mean about the rest of the world? And so
yeah.
this big belief around, can the world really be that dark? Can people's psychology be that really dark and unconsciously or covertly manipulative? And the answer is yeah. And to your point, B, the last thing I'll say here on this is, the whether it's a primary or secondary motivator, I would more so reframe that to unconscious. I think that a lot of people have unconscious motivators that
Yeah.
psychologically drive them, and a lot of people are okay with being asleep on what their motivators are. And so that never actually comes to their full consciousness. And so when it comes to someone walking around being really quick to give and or do certain things for other people, I think healthy skepticism I think is really actually great for the right person. And so everyone's different in
Mhm.
this. And that's why I will kind of end on this note, because your life of experiences and the set of contexts that you have come from is going to be so different from someone else's. So, with that being said, whether I think that the one thing that I want all of our listeners kind of asking themselves to what you had mentioned is, think about next time you want to go give, or next time you find yourself feeling compelled to take an action. Question yourself, where is that coming from? What is the motivator underneath that? And then challenge yourself, okay, what could be the motivator that's underneath that? Because there's always a hidden agenda unconsciously. That doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad agenda, and it doesn't mean that it's a harmful or hurtful agenda. It just there might be a part that's kind of obscuring your own intentions from you, because you're trying to
Mm,
survive, right? Or you're trying to thrive in your own setting. So, what is the hidden agenda that I have when I go to give? And I think that that reflective practice can be really great, instead of just kind of, I would say, bucket statementing, thinking that everyone else is out to get you. When you can understand your own psychology and the depth of that, you can also recognize and have empathy for other people, instead of just going quick, surefire into skepticism. So, with that,
absolutely.
I will close with my episode suggestion, which is 281. It's a Motivation Monday, how to tell hard truths. B.
Mine is 284 green flags to look for in your relationship. If this is something that you want more help understanding, more help learning, maybe you want to show up more selflessly and you want to be able to understand, you know, what the how to navigate different types of relationships in your life and show up the best that you can, send us a DM, get started in, one-on-one coaching or therapy. We've helped hundreds of people one-on-one and thousands of people with all the different platforms that we utilize. So this is something we adore doing and something
Mhm.
that we've helped so many other people be able to do. So if you want help with that, please reach out and we would love to be there for you.
Mhm.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful week and we'll see you next time. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.